I'm 33 years old, and I've been with my girlfriend for almost 3 years. To anyone on the outside, she looks like the dream. Tall, elegant, with a sharp wit that makes everyone around her laugh. My friends envied me. My parents said I was lucky. And I believed them, at first. When I met her, she walked into the bar like she owned it. She didn't just talk, she commanded. Every man in the room turned his head, and every woman seemed to shrink under her gaze. She came straight to me, smirked, and said, "You look like the kind of guy who'd buy me a drink without asking questions." And I did. God, I did. That one drink turned into a weekend, and before I knew it, I was wrapped around her finger. The first months were intoxicating. She was fire, unpredictable, exciting, dangerous in a way that made my pulse race. She'd send me messages in the middle of the night, "Get up. I want to go somewhere." And I'd drive half asleep across the city just to be with her. She made me feel like life was finally something worth chasing. But slowly, the fire turned into smoke. And the smoke began to choke me. It started with small digs. "Why do you dress like that? You look cheap. Your friends are losers. Why waste your time on them? Your job is boring. You should be grateful I even put up with you." She said it all with a smile, that cold, sharp smile that always left me doubting whether she was joking. But deep down, I knew she wasn't. The worst part. She had this way of twisting reality. If I ever tried to defend myself, she'd laugh and say, "You're too sensitive. Can't you take a joke?" If I pulled away, she'd flood me with affection. Kisses, whispers, promises. Just enough to make me believe again. Just enough to keep me hooked. And I stayed. Like a fool, I stayed. Recently, though, something has shifted. She's stopped even pretending to hide her contempt. She goes out late, comes back smelling of perfume that isn't hers. Her phone is glued to her hand, and when I ask who she's texting, she smirks and says, "Why? Are you jealous? You should be." It's not the cheating that scares me anymore. It's the way she wants me to know. The way she leaves just enough evidence behind, like breadcrumbs, daring me to follow. And sometimes, late at night, lying next to her while she sleeps peacefully, I can't help but wonder, is she just careless? Or is she testing me? Because with her, nothing is ever an accident. The first undeniable sign came on a Sunday evening. She had told me she was meeting her friend Katya for a quick dinner. She even threw in details, how Katya had just broken up with her boyfriend, how she needed support. It sounded believable enough. I nodded, kissed her goodbye, and told her to take her time. But when she came home 4 hours later, something was off. She was glowing, not in the way you glow after comforting a sad friend, but in the way someone glows after being adored. Her lipstick was freshly reapplied, her perfume stronger than when she left. I tried to keep my tone casual. "How's Katya holding up?" I asked as she slipped off her heels. There was the faintest pause before she answered. "She'll be fine. We just talked, you know. Girl stuff." Then she smiled, almost too sweetly, and added, "Why? Do you not trust me?" That smile froze me. It wasn't affection. It was mockery. The next day, I decided to test her. Over breakfast, I said, "I ran into Katya last night on my way back from the store." Her spoon clattered against the bowl for a second, before she quickly regained composure. "Oh, that's strange. Maybe you saw someone else." "She was definitely with me." I looked at her calmly. "Maybe." She leaned across the table, eyes glittering. "You're imagining things. You do that sometimes." And just like that, she flipped it back on me. Gaslighting me in broad daylight, with a smile. The cracks kept appearing. One afternoon, I grabbed her jacket to hang it up and found a receipt in the pocket. A wine bar. 2 glasses. Paid in cash. The timestamp matched perfectly with the movie night with Katya, she had claimed. That evening, I placed the receipt on the counter. She glanced at it, then at me. Her lips curved into that infuriating smirk. "You're checking my pockets now?" That's pathetic, she said. Then, without missing a beat. It was just me and Katya. She doesn't drink red wine, so I ordered both. Problem solved. She said it so smoothly, so confidently, that I almost doubted myself. Almost. But the thing that broke me happened a week later. She had gone to yoga class. I didn't believe her. So I drove past the gym. The parking lot was half empty, the lights off inside. No class. No car. I waited. An hour later, I saw her drive up from the opposite direction, humming to herself, yoga mat neatly rolled in the back seat. How was class? I asked when she walked in. Exhausting, she said, stretching dramatically, a sly sparkle in her eyes. Why do you look at me like that? Don't tell me you followed me. My throat went dry. She was daring me to admit it, to play into her script of the paranoid boyfriend. I forced a smile. No. Just wondering. She leaned in, kissed me softly, and whispered. Good. Because men who stalk their girlfriends? That's creepy. Her voice lingered in my ear long after she walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail. The lies weren't sloppy. They weren't accidents. She was leaving them there for me, sprinkling breadcrumbs to see if I'd follow. And when I did, she mocked me for it. The next morning, she sat across from me at breakfast, scrolling on her phone. Without looking up, she said, "You know, you'd fall apart without me. Honestly, I think I could do anything, and you'd still stay." I froze. My spoon halfway to my mouth. She looked up, finally, and smiled. What's wrong? Cat got your tongue. I forced a laugh. But inside, something shifted. It wasn't about whether she was cheating anymore. It was about control. Power. She wanted me broken, doubting, clinging to her no matter what she did. And the terrifying thought that kept echoing in my head was, maybe she's right. I had sworn to myself I would never be that guy. The one who snoops through his girlfriend's things, who turns into a detective in his own home. But she was pushing me to the edge. Every lie she fed me with that smug little smirk chipped away at my sanity. Every time she called me paranoid, every time she laughed at my doubt, I felt myself slipping further into the trap she'd set for me. One night, after she drifted off to sleep, I sat in the dark staring at her phone on the nightstand. The glow of the screen reflected faintly, taunting me. My chest was tight, my hands sweating. I told myself, don't do it. Don't stoop to this. But then I remembered her words at breakfast. I think I could do anything, and you'd still stay. That broke me. I picked up the phone. Of course, she had a passcode. But I'd watched her unlock it 100 times. 4 digits. Her birthday, reversed. The screen lit up instantly. What I saw made my stomach twist. Messages. Dozens of them. Not to Katya, or any other female name she liked to toss around as props in her stories. These were to numbers saved under male names. Daniel. Mark. Pavel. Each thread filled with flirty lines, late-night arrangements, compliments about her looks, jokes about me. One message stopped me cold. He's getting suspicious. But it's fun. He still won't leave me. And her reply. Of course he won't. He's too weak. I think he likes the pain. My hands trembled as I scrolled. Photo after photo, not explicit, but damning. Drinks at bars, dinners, smiles too intimate to mistake. Always different men, always the same game. I should have felt rage. I should have thrown the phone at the wall, shaken her awake, demanded answers. Instead, I felt hollow. Empty. Like I'd known all along. But seeing the proof ripped out the last piece of denial I had clung to. I put the phone back exactly as I found it, slipped under the covers, and stared at the ceiling. She stirred beside me, curled against my chest like nothing was wrong. I didn't move. Around 3 a.m., half asleep, she whispered, "You'll never leave. You need me too much." I lay there frozen, my heart pounding. Did she know I had looked? Or was it just another cruel test, timed perfectly to break me? The next day, she acted as though everything was normal. She made coffee, hummed, kissed me goodbye before work. But now every smile, every glance, looked different to me. I saw the predator behind the mask. That evening, I searched deeper. Not just her phone this time, her desk, her purse, even the drawer she always kept locked. Inside, I found a small black notebook. My breath caught as I opened it. It wasn't a diary. It was a log. Notes. About me. Confronted me about perfume. Denied. Reaction. Frustrated but apologetic. Good. Tested with Katya again. He doubted himself. Perfect. Next. Mention Daniel at dinner. Gauge jealousy. Page after page. Detailed observations of my behavior. Dates, times, triggers. I wasn't her boyfriend. I was her experiment. I sat in her chair, notebook open in my lap, my pulse pounding in my ears. My life, my pain, my confusion, all of it reduced to neat little bullet points in her careful handwriting. When I heard the door unlock downstairs, I shoved the notebook back into the drawer and closed it softly. I sat on the couch, pretending to scroll my phone. She walked in, her eyes flicking over me instantly, reading me like always. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "You look tired. Long day." I forced a smile. "Yeah, just work." She poured herself a glass of wine, sat across from me, and tilted her head. "You know, sometimes I think you'd break without me. And part of me wants to see it happen." She sipped her wine, never breaking eye contact. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't careless. She wasn't clumsy. Every lie, every mistake, every breadcrumb was intentional. She wanted to watch me unravel. That night, as she slept soundly beside me, I stared into the darkness and asked myself the only question that mattered. How much longer before she decides the experiment is finished? I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. After nights of staring at the ceiling, knowing exactly what she was doing to me, after reading her sick little notes where my pain was reduced to bullet points, I reached a breaking point. I didn't explode, not in the way she wanted. No yelling, no broken dishes, no slamming doors. Just cold, steady resolve. It started small. At breakfast, I looked her straight in the eye and asked, "So, how's Daniel?" She froze for half a second, then smiled. "Still jealous, are we?" She leaned across the table, her tone playful but her eyes sharp. "You know, it's not attractive. You should work on that." I didn't flinch. I didn't stutter. I said calmly, "I know you're lying. I know where you go. And I know what you write about me." Her smile didn't vanish. It widened. That night, she staged her performance. Dinner, wine, candles. She dressed in black silk, the kind she used to wear for me in the early days. She poured me a glass, sat across from me, and said softly, "So, you think you've figured me out?" I didn't answer. I just stared. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a puzzle she had already solved. Then she laughed, low, cruel. "Do you really think you're the first man to say that? To accuse me? To think he's found proof?" She leaned closer, her perfume thick in the air. "Men like you always think they're clever. But all it takes is one story, my story, and suddenly you're the villain. Unstable. Dangerous. And I'm the poor girl who tried to make it work." My blood boiled, but I held steady. I pulled out my phone, scrolled, and hit play. Her voice filled the room, a recording from one of her late-night calls. "He's suspicious again. I'll push harder tomorrow. He'll crack soon. I can't wait to see it." For the first time, her mask slipped. Just slightly. Her eyes flickered, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then she laughed. "Clever. You really have been paying attention." She raised her glass and clinked it against mine. "But what do you think that recording proves? that I was joking, venting. You know what it really proves? That you spy on me. That you're obsessed. She leaned back in her chair, smirking. If I told anyone about this, the recording, the snooping, the notes you stole, who do you think they'd believe? The confident woman who smiles in public, or the man who shakes every time she looks at him? She had prepared for this. She wanted me to confront her. This was part of the experiment too. I didn't speak. I gathered my phone, stood, and walked to the door. "Where are you going?" she called after me, her voice almost mocking. "For air," I muttered. Her laughter followed me down the hall. "Good boy. Don't take too long. You'll come back. You always do." Outside, I stood in the cold night air, my chest burning. She was right about one thing. I always came back. She had trained me like a dog on a leash. Punish, reward, repeat. But something felt different now. She wasn't hiding her cruelty anymore. She wasn't just manipulating me, she was openly daring me to push back, knowing she already had the counterattack loaded. And that terrified me more than anything. Because if she had prepared for my confrontation, what else had she already scripted? That night, as I finally drifted into shallow sleep, I realized the horrifying truth. This wasn't a battle I had started. It was one she had been planning from the very beginning. And she was still 3 moves ahead. After that confrontation, I understood one thing: a direct fight with her was doomed. She would always have a backup plan, a new story, a new mask that everyone else would believe. She had been waiting for my accusations, preparing for them, even craving them. Because every shout, every word out of my mouth became evidence for her own narrative of the dangerous, paranoid man. So I decided to change the rules. No more attacking. No more defending. I would build my own game, in the shadows. The first step, I bought a small safe and placed it in my office at work. Inside, I put everything I had collected: copies of her notes, printed out messages, recordings of her late-night calls. I knew that if she found even part of it at home, she would twist it against me. The second step, I learned to wear a mask. When she forgot to take off a ring that clearly wasn't hers after a night with a friend, I smiled and said, "Nice jewelry. Is it new?" She would narrow her eyes, study me, searching for a crack in my reaction. But she found none. The third step, I started playing the role of the perfect man. Too perfect. I came home on time, brought her flowers, asked about her day. She hated it. Her game only worked when I was weak, confused, broken. Now I had become a mirror, and in it she couldn't see her victory anymore. But the more I played, the more I sensed her new tactics. She began acting differently. Not just cheating, but making it obvious. Her phone now lit up with messages right in front of me. Men's names, hearts, even photos. She left them there on purpose, knowing I'd see. And every time I didn't react, her smile turned colder. One evening she set her phone on the table, screen up, and sat across from me. "Don't you even want to know who that is?" she asked. I swallowed the rage rising in my chest, smiled, and said, "If it's important, you'll tell me." The silence between us was heavier than any scream. That night, I overheard her on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice was sharp, irritated. "He's not reacting. Not at all. To anything. I do everything I can, and he just stays calm." Pause. Then a quiet phrase that felt like a sentence. "Without it, it's no fun." That's when I understood. She was losing control. Her experiment was collapsing. Without my reactions, she had no results. Without my emotions, she had no power. I looked at her differently now. Not as a queen, not as a tormentor, but as a child who had lost her favorite toy. Her poison no longer worked. But I also knew this. When a monster realizes its trap no longer works, it becomes more dangerous than ever. And her next move might not be a game, it might be war. She had always believed I danced to her tune. Every move she made, every smile, every mistake, all of it designed to watch me react. And for years I did. Anger, jealousy, doubt. I played the part she had written for me. But now there was only silence. One evening she came home late. I was sitting in the living room reading a book. She stopped in the doorway, expecting me to ask where she had been. I looked up, smiled, and said, "Want some tea?" She blinked a few times, then forced a smile. "Aren't you curious why I was late?" "If you want me to know, you'll tell me," I replied calmly, returning to my page. Her smile vanished. From then on, things began to shift. She became desperate. What had once been her little games, forgetting to delete messages, accidentally leaving her chat open, turned into open provocations. She left her phone face up on the table, notifications flashing with men's names and heart emojis. She dropped their names into casual conversation, pausing to study my reaction. But there was no reaction anymore. I smiled, nodded, even asked, "Oh, what did he say?" Her eyes darkened. She tried harder. She came home wearing a man's scarf. She placed expensive flowers on the counter and said, "Someone gave these to me. Don't you want to know who?" I just replied, "They're beautiful. Let's put them in a vase." Her jaw tightened, her hands clenched into fists. "You don't even get jealous. Does it mean nothing to you?" I met her gaze steadily. I stopped caring when I realized this was all a performance. She flinched. Her smile cracked. That night I heard her again on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice was sharp, frustrated. "He doesn't react to anything. I've tried everything, and he just stays calm." Pause. Then softer, almost defeated. "It's boring now." That was the moment I realized she was losing her grip. Her experiment was failing. Without my reactions, she had no power, no control, no purpose. I saw her differently now. Not as the queen of the game, not even as the tormentor I once feared. She looked like a child who had lost her toy. Her poison didn't work anymore. But I also knew, when a monster realizes its tricks no longer work, it becomes more dangerous than ever. And her next move would not be a game. It would be war. Her laughter was gone. Those little victorious smirks she used to wear whenever I flinched with jealousy or anger had disappeared. Instead, I started catching her with a hollow look in her eyes, as if she was thinking, "Why isn't he breaking anymore?" But monsters can't survive long without food. And since my reactions no longer fed her, she began searching for something else. One evening she came home earlier than I expected. I was sitting on the couch, working on my laptop. She entered, tossed her bag on the floor, crossed her arms, and stared directly at me. "You're ignoring me," she said flatly. "I'm just working," I replied calmly. She stepped closer. Her eyes gleamed, but not with affection. They burned with a fire looking for gasoline. "You don't get jealous anymore. You don't ask where I go. It's like you don't care." I shrugged. "It's your life." Her smile was terrifying. "Wrong answer, darling." From then, her provocations turned blatant. She left strange business cards on the table. One time she even forgot a man's watch at home, clearly not mine. When I picked it up, she winked and asked, "Nice, isn't it?" I put it back down without a word. That silence drove her crazy. Her whole power relied on my emotional reaction, and I was starving her of it. So she escalated. One morning, I woke up to a knock at the door. 2 police officers stood there. They politely asked if everything was all right at home, if there had been arguments, raised voices, broken things. My stomach twisted with dread. And then I saw her in the kitchen doorway, bathrobe, coffee cup in hand, wearing her sweetest innocent smile. She looked at me, tilted her head, and mouthed silently, "Your turn." That night, she didn't hide her intentions anymore. "You know," she said over dinner, sipping her wine, "all it takes is a few phone calls, and no one will ever listen to your side again. People believe me. Always." She leaned closer, her voice like venom. So do you still think you can beat me with silence? I realized then, this was no longer just a game. This was war. She wasn't satisfied with just watching me doubt myself. Now she wanted to erase me officially, legally, socially, completely. And if I didn't strike first, she would. That night I went to the office, opened the safe where I kept everything hidden. I pulled out the files, her late-night calls, her taunting messages, her notebook full of manipulations. I looked at the pile of evidence, my hands shaking. For the first time in months, I felt a strange calm. These weren't my secrets anymore. They were my weapons. If she wanted open war, then fine. I was ready. The knock on the door from the police had been her opening salvo. A test, and a warning. She wanted me to know she could twist the story, that with just a few words she could flip the world against me. But something changed in me that day. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was angry, but cold, focused. If she wanted war, then war is what she would get. I started preparing my counterattack. First, I met with my lawyer. I slid the folders across his desk, the recordings of her late-night calls where she bragged about pushing me to the edge, the notebook where she documented my every reaction, the photos of her with other men. His eyebrows rose higher with every page. "She's building a case against you," he said finally. "But what she doesn't realize is that this evidence flips the narrative. She isn't the victim, you are." Those words lit something inside me. For months, I had been the rat in her maze. Now, I was the one setting traps. At home, I kept my mask on. She paraded her mistakes more boldly than ever. Strange perfume on her clothes, lipstick smudged when she came back late, men's items carelessly left in her bag. Each one a grenade she expected me to pick up and throw. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. "Have fun." She narrowed her eyes, searching for the cracks. "Don't you want to know where I was?" I shrugged. "If you wanted me to know, you'd tell me." The silence that followed was thick with fury. She was losing control. One night, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You think you're smart now," she hissed. "But you're still mine. Everything about you. Do you really think anyone will believe your little folder over me?" I looked her straight in the eye. "They don't have to believe me. They just have to hear you, in your own voice." I pulled out my phone, played a recording, her laughing, whispering, "He'll crack soon. I can't wait to see it." Her face went pale for the first time. No smirk. No mocking smile. Just silence. Then, slowly, she clapped her hands. A slow, deliberate applause. "So you really did learn." That night in bed, she whispered, "This isn't over." And for the first time, I whispered back, "You're right. But this time, it won't end your way." The apartment felt less like a home now and more like a chessboard. Every look, every word, every silence was a move. I thought my evidence, my silence, my control had evened the odds. But she reminded me just how dangerous she could be. She struck first. It happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. I walked up to my building and froze at the sight of 2 police officers waiting by my door. My heart sank before they even spoke. They asked polite questions at first, but every word was a dagger. "Do you and your girlfriend argue often? Has there been shouting, threats, broken things? Would you describe yourself as under stress lately?" Each question painted me into her picture. I didn't need to ask where it came from. She had gone to them first, spun her story, planted the seed. I could already see it in their eyes. Suspicion. Doubt. When they finally left, I turned and saw her in the kitchen, sipping wine as if nothing had happened. She smiled, tilting her head like a cat playing with a mouse. "Rough day?" she asked sweetly. I clenched my fists, forcing my voice steady. "What did you tell them?" She smirked, sipping slowly. "Just that I worry about you. You've been tense." Her eyes glittered with amusement. She was savoring my helplessness. But she didn't know everything. That night, while she slept, I pulled out the hidden phone she didn't know existed. On it was the recording of her late-night call, her whisper, "He's calmer now. Next week we'll have enough. I'll file, and it'll be clean." I sent it, along with the photos, receipts, and copies of her notes, to my lawyer. His reply came within minutes. "This changes everything. We move first." For the first time in months, I felt the weight shift. The next evening, when she came home late again, I was waiting at the table. She set down her purse, already smirking, ready to bait me into another reaction. Before she could speak, I slid an envelope across the table. Inside were copies of everything: her recordings, her notebook entries, photos of her with other men. She didn't flinch. Her face remained perfectly composed. Slowly, her lips curved into a smile. "Well," she said softly, "looks like you finally grew a spine." I leaned forward, my voice cold and steady. "No. I finally grew teeth." For the first time, the silence in the room didn't belong to her. She didn't laugh. She didn't gloat. She just sat there, studying me like a new opponent she hadn't prepared for. And in that silence, I knew. The game had finally changed. We weren't circling anymore. We were striking. After sliding that envelope across the table, the air between us shifted. For months, she had been the one in control, dangling lies in front of me, feeding me poison disguised as affection. But that night, for the first time, I saw her pause. Just a flicker. Just enough to know I had finally drawn blood. But the most dangerous predator is the one who realizes she might lose. The calm before the storm. For days afterward, the apartment was silent. Not the ordinary silence of people too tired to talk. No, this was charged, heavy, like the pause between lightning and thunder. She no longer taunted me with perfume-stained jackets or fake names dropped into casual conversation. Instead, she watched me. Always watching. Over breakfast, while I worked, when we lay in bed. Her eyes followed me like I was the experiment she was no longer sure she understood. And I matched her silence with my own. I smiled when she smiled, laughed when she laughed, and gave her nothing more. It was a stalemate. But we both knew it couldn't last. Her strike. It came on a Thursday evening. I returned home from work to find her already waiting at the table, wine glass in hand, a thick stack of papers laid out in front of her. She gestured for me to sit. "Since we're being honest now," she said smoothly, "let's put everything on the table." I sat across from her, my chest tight, my pulse steady. She slid the papers toward me. My name was all over them, reports, statements, even an affidavit. It was the story she had been building for months. Me as paranoid, unstable, controlling, dangerous. Each incident carefully detailed, some half-truths twisted into weapons, others complete fabrications. She leaned back, smiling faintly. All it takes is one judge, one officer, one moment where you lose your temper, and this becomes reality. Her confidence was terrifying. My counter. I pulled out my own folder. Thicker. Heavier. Photos of her with other men, the notebook where she logged my reactions like a scientist, the recordings of her laughing about how she'd break me. I pushed it across the table. "Reality cuts both ways," I said quietly. She flipped through the pages, her face perfectly still. No smirk. No mocking laughter. Just silence. Finally, she whispered, "So you've really been keeping score?" "No," I replied. "I've been surviving the explosion." For a long moment, we sat in silence, our evidence lying between us like two loaded guns. Then she laughed, low, cruel, but tinged with something I hadn't heard before. Unease. "You think this saves you?" she asked. "You think anyone will side with you over me? I've already won. People love me. They believe me. You're invisible." I leaned closer, my voice steady as steel. "Maybe. But people love the truth more. And I've got your voice admitting everything." I played the recording on my phone. Her own words filled the room. "He's suspicious again. I'll push harder tomorrow. He'll crack soon. I can't wait to see it. Her wine glass trembled slightly in her hand. That was the first time I'd ever seen her afraid. The end game. That night, we didn't sleep. She lay in bed with her back to me, perfectly still. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, knowing neither of us could go on like this. The next morning, I called my lawyer. By noon, papers were filed. When I returned home, she was waiting, eyes blazing. "You really did it," she hissed. "Yes," I said calmly. "And this time, you don't get to write the ending." She laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "You think you've escaped me? Even if we're done, you'll carry me forever. Every doubt, every scar, every night you lay awake wondering if you were enough, that's me. That's my victory." I stared at her, my chest heavy but my voice firm. "Maybe. But monsters lose their power once the victim stops playing." The last smile. When I left the apartment for the last time, she stood in the doorway, smiling that same sharp smile she had worn the night we met. "Goodbye," she whispered. "You'll miss me when the silence gets too loud." I walked away without answering. Because for the first time in years, the silence wasn't hers. It was mine.